This is Zestology, new rules for living with energy, vitality and motivation. I'm Tony Wrighton, recording this podcast in a place which can, probably most be accurately described as planes, trains and automobiles. It's one of those weird days where I've got a lot of TV work on today. I've just been recording Golfing World, which goes out on Sky every week, and then I'm going off to Sky Sports to work there in the evening. So got up early in the morning, basically spending all day at work, and I've got just a couple of hour window in the middle in between the first job and the second job, if you like. And Golfing World, it's a lovely office, but it's perhaps not the most idyllic destination. It's kind of in a business park fairly close to Heathrow, and there's a big road nearby, and there's kind of lots of trucks and factories kind of grinding away in the background, as you might be able to hear. But I've somehow managed to find this hidden little canal in the middle of nowhere, and I'm recording this Zestology introduction out and about as I normally do, and I found this little canal. And the reason that I've sought this out is because Scott Nelson, who I interview in today's Zestology podcast, comes up with an incredible stat that I hadn't heard before, and to be quite honest, I was quite shocked by. And because of that, I've come to find this canal today. So it's pretty much the first part of this podcast. It is Scott Nelson, who knows all about light. He runs the company called Joovv, which sell infrared lights. And in fact, he's been on this podcast before, and I use a Joovv light pretty much every day, as you'll hear on the podcast. And as well as infrared light, he knows a lot about light in general and the effect that light can have on us, the healing effect and the beneficial effect that light can have on us. And he comes up with a stat at the start of the podcast that has made me seek out this canal in the midst of all this chaos and the roads and the planes, trains and automobiles and the reversing lorries in the background. He's made me find this canal today because of that stat when I recorded the podcast yesterday. It did shock me a little bit. So I've got my 2-hour gap between both my jobs, and I've just come outside for a little bit. And I think you're going to enjoy this podcast. As always, here he is, Scott Nelson on Zestology.
There's kind of a fairly well-known stat. It's actually 93% of our time. Most people's time, in the Western world is spent inside. And at first blush, it sounds like an extremely high stat or extremely high number. But when you start to think about it, you're like, wait a second. When I wake up in the morning, I get ready inside, right? Then if I have a commute, I take the train or the subway or my car to work. I'm inside, and under artificial light all day. Then, especially during the times of year that the sun sets early, then I go home, I commute home the same way, and then I eat dinner inside, and then boom, there you go. 100% of my time is indoors. You know what I mean? It's probably a pretty, I think there's a lot of substance to that number, and it's something that we've tried to bring a little bit more attention to, because if you're not intentional about it, you'll get years and years, decades go by, and you're like, wait, I don't get any sort of natural light at all. And there's obviously some pretty negative downstream health ramifications. And if you're living a life indoors that much.
That's really shocking, isn't it? And actually, do you know what? I think it's summer at the moment while we're recording this, and it's really quite a nice day here. And I think I've spent about an hour outside. But I've been awake for about 8 hours, so it's really not good enough.
Right. And the same thing for me. I live and breathe sort of the light therapy in the light therapy space. So you'd think I'd be even more attuned to this, but I have to be intentional about it. So even my day, I first thing in the morning, I try to go on some sort of walk or jog, and then if I work out, I try to do it outside, But other than that, if I'm not thinking about it, I try to take, scheduled breaks and spend some more time outside. But, it's just kind of one of those things that you just gets lost in the shuffle almost, if you're not, cognizant of how much time you're really spending inside.
Well, yeah. And then if it's winter and it's cold, then, it's kind of going outside is a thing, isn't it? It's like an effort.
Exactly. Yeah. We're in Southern California now, but, I'm born and raised in the Midwest, or, most recently we moved from Minneapolis, Minnesota, and that's If your listeners, I'm sure, are somewhat familiar with that part of the country, at least here in the U.S. It's cold. It's a cold climate, and yeah, you're right. I mean, most nine months out of the year, it's exactly how you described it, an effort to get outside.
Yeah. So last time we spoke, I think you lived in Minneapolis. Have you moved now to California?
We have. Yeah, we moved the entire company, operations, everything, out to South Orange County. So we're about 20 minutes south of Irvine, California. Yeah, so it's definitely a drastic change from where we were in Minneapolis. But what brought us to Minneapolis was my background in med tech. So we had spent about 6 years there, and I was with companies like Covidien and Medtronic. It's like the Silicon Valley for the traditional medical device arena there in Minneapolis. But we had an opportunity to move to a warmer climate, which we wanted to just for personal reasons, and then it's just being in Southern California, there's a reason why, LeBron James signed with the Lakers, right? There's just a lot more activity, especially kind of in sort of the health game here in Southern California. So it's been fun. It's been a fun ride.
Yeah.
It's the first 9 months of the year.
And I suppose also, you're doing a lot of work based around light and light therapy, and you've done a lot of research around light. It kind of makes sense that you, with all this kind of light stats in your head and light science in your head, wanted to move somewhere where there is a particular quality to the light in California, isn't there?
There is. There's no doubt. I mean, even like, so we're in the city that we're in actually is San Clemente, and it's about equidistance from LA and San Diego, but it's beautiful. I mean, the weather's great year round. So, you're typically in the 70 degree, Fahrenheit range, but the sun, you're that much closer to the equator. So the sun is actually pretty intense. So even on a 75 degree Fahrenheit day, I don't have the Celsius calculation here in front of me, but it can feel a lot warmer just because the sun is that much more intense.
And you're still spending 93% of your time indoors.
I'm trying to get better at that. Maybe I'm closer to like 70 or 80%. But some people on our team, it's funny. Some people on our team literally work outside nearly the whole day, which is kind of cool. But I guess that's the kind of weather that you're afforded, out here in California.
Well, that's the dream, isn't it? If you can get a standing desk and you can be outside, that's perfect, isn't it?
There you go. As long as the glare off your computer screens isn't too bad. Yeah, that's perfect.
And I know you guys say with the infrared light, obviously you sell infrared light, but you obviously talk about infrared light a lot, and you've been on Zestology before, and you were saying, one of the things you said before is probably the best thing is if the light is so good outside, you don't necessarily need to use the Joovv light, but get outside. That's the best thing. But sometimes it's not easy, or it's dark, or you're in Minneapolis in the middle of winter and the light quality isn't very good.
Right. Yeah. First and foremost, we recommend people get more natural sunlight, without a doubt. Don't buy a gadget. Don't buy a tool. Just try to be more intentional about how much natural sunlight you're getting, and when you're getting it. During certain parts of the day, that's ideal. I mean, we certainly don't advocate for being outside all day and just getting slaughtered by the UV the UV rays, especially during the midday hours. By no means, but just being more intentional, being more cognizant of how much or how little natural light that you get. And so that's what we kind of recommend first and foremost, is just try to get more sunlight. But there's a lot of people that can't do that have jobs. Most people it's pretty difficult. And then especially during the winter months. Whether you're in Europe, or whether you're here in the U.S. or various other parts of the world, it's just tough to get that much natural light, even if you're cognizant of it, even if you want to be more intentional about it. And so that's why as a secondary step, we recommend getting investing in some type of light therapy product.
And I have a Joovv, and I must admit, I love it. And I would say the quality of the light is like the brightest daylight here in London. So often I will meditate in front of it in the morning. And here I should probably insert a bit of an apology to my neighbours, because I kind of live in a flat in quite near to central London, and we've got kind of big glass windows. But Scott, I do like to meditate in front of the Joovv naked. Because I think it's I've heard it's good for testosterone, getting a bit of infrared light all over the body, everywhere. But I think the neighbours might be a little bit shocked by that. So it kind of floods the flat with this intensely bright kind of red light. And there is something about it on a physical level that just does feel quite good sitting in front of it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. In fact, that's probably one of the most common responses we get from people that use our devices on a daily basis is just that calming effect. There's just the and a lot of people are doing it while they're meditating, just like yourself. And so
there's naked though.
Yeah. They're doing it naked. It's funny that you mentioned that. We actually just recently posted an image on our Instagram of someone that's kind of probably in a little bit of a similar flat that you are, like a lot of natural windows, and they're using it at night, and so their flat just like stands out amongst all the others. Yeah. It's just completely red. But you're right. I mean that's one of the things that we definitely recommend is being exposed. Your skin needs to be exposed to the light, and so most people are doing it while they're naked. Of course, if you have like one of our smaller units, you wouldn't, and you're just like maybe treating a bum ankle or a bum knee, you wouldn't need to be naked for that. But if you're using one of our larger full body systems, most people are naked, full exposure. And yeah, we've certainly had a lot of people, a lot of males respond with stories about how their testosterone has increased. It's something that we don't actively promote as a company, just because we don't have an FDA indication for that. But there's definitely a lot of anecdotal stories. In fact, we were about a month ago, we were over in Phoenix, Arizona, recording some footage with Patrick Peterson, who's like one of the best defensive players in the NFL. And we actually met with a longtime customer of ours, Dr. John Toma. He's a chiropractor, but he's more of a he's a chiropractor by training, but he's more of a functional medicine doc. Really, really nice guy, and he lives. I mean, he walks the talk. He lives and breathes, all things health. And so it was interesting. The guy is like he's the epitome of health. I mean, he's totally jacked in a very natural way. And it's interesting, but he grew up in an area where there wasn't a whole lot of sunlight. He grew up in Ohio, actually, and always had struggled with low testosterone levels, despite what he's doing. I mean, this guy, like he doesn't use any artificial light at night. His diet is like the cleanest diet I've ever encountered. Yeah. It's amazing. But just by introducing more natural sunlight into his lifestyle, and then incorporating red and near infrared light therapy over the course of 3 and then again at 6 months, he had his blood work done, and his testosterone went from his free testosterone. I'm sorry, his total and free across the board was elevated, but his total testosterone went from in the 300s to, after about 3 months, it was up near 700. And then at 6 months, it was up near 1,200. And so like there's a lot of anecdotal stories like that. I mean, again, one of those things that we don't claim as a company, but it is cool to hear different stories about guys that are healthy across the board, but are just introducing more light into their sort of their lifestyle and seeing a lot of benefits from that.
Yeah. And what about? I mean, I know that you're kind of big on the science. Do you? I mean, one of the things that you're quite hot on is because of your background. The scientific research behind red light is very important, and I think that that's one of the things that has kind of sold me on this. The fact that kind of in Zestology, I've met a lot of people who've claimed a lot of stuff about a lot of devices and supplements and everything else that can kind of pretty much turn you into whatever you want to be. But I know that one of the things you emphasize is the fact that there is a lot of scientific research behind infrared light, which I can never quite remember what you said, but it sounded quite compelling when you told me about it.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way, Tony. I mean, I think if you've been in this world, this world of like whether you want to call it biohacking or natural health, I think it's incredibly important. But also, there's a lot of charlatans, unfortunately. Yeah. And I shouldn't probably even describe it as that. Maybe they're just a little bit early with their with their tech, and the science doesn't necessarily support it, but light therapy, or photobiomodulation, as it's technically sort of referred to in academic literature, is supported by a robust amount of medical and scientific research. In fact, when we last saw each other at PaleoFX, there in Austin, one of the things that we often tell people that come to our booth is like, of all of the different gadgets or supplements, here at a big kind of natural health conference like this, light therapy is supported by the most scientific research by far. Like there's no questions. And, just to get a little bit more granular, there's over 3,000 peer-reviewed manuscripts that have been published on light therapy. And what's, I think personally, just because of my background in the medical device game, what I think is even more interesting is the fact that there's over 200 randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies on light therapy, on red and near-infrared light therapy. There's over 200 of those published in peer-reviewed journals. And so I think that's really crucial. So it's one of those things that at first blush sounds kind of woo-woo, like really light, these different colors of light can do these things, but it's like there's if you just give it a shot, and just pay a little bit more attention, and if you're willing to kind of peel back the layers just a little bit, I'm sure you'll probably fall into the same camp as me, where it's like, wow, this is too hard to ignore.
Yeah, that is excellent that there's the research behind it, because a lot of the stuff doesn't have it. And then, what would you say? I mean, for people who are kind of thinking about at least trying it, or at least going outside and getting more natural light, what are the biggest benefits? We've already kind of spoken about the primal importance of that 93% of time spent indoors. Certainly I find just being outside, probably aligned with some sort of movement, definitely boosts my energy. Is energy something that's kind of, obviously energy is the subject of this podcast, so it's definitely worth talking about that. What would you say about energy and infrared light?
Yeah, so I would say, kind of going back to what we originally kind of discussed about just trying to get more natural light in general. I would say if you can do anything, try to experience the sunrise and the sunset as often as possible, because that will help rebalance your circadian rhythm. But also red and near infrared wavelengths. There's a greater percentage of those wavelengths in during the sunrise and sunset, and so that's why it's pretty crucial to try to experience a little bit of that on a daily basis. But when it comes to photobiomodulation or light therapy devices, the benefits are really, really wide ranging, and we mentioned it earlier. Sort of the enhanced sort of mental clarity and the cognitive benefits; those are actually very, very proven in clinical literature. But the benefits go well beyond that too, and this kind of sounds almost too good to be true, but it's everything from muscle recovery to reduced joint pain and inflammation to hair regrowth, believe it or not, to skin health is an obvious benefit. There's also clinical research that shows that it helps enhance the function of your thyroid gland. So there's I wouldn't say there's as much research, but there is some research that suggests these wavelengths of light help to stimulate your Leydig cells in your testes to produce more testosterone. So like the benefits are so wide ranging, and the reason for that is and it kind of makes sense when you stop and think about it, is these wavelengths of light in essence help every single cell of your body that has a mitochondria. They help your mitochondria produce more ATP, or more cellular energy. And that's why you get such a wide variety of benefits, is because almost every single cell in our body does have mitochondria, and we need to produce ATP in order to function. And so, when we're under stress, whether it's intentional, by the way of exercise, or whether it's unintentional by the way of getting insufficient sleep or something like that, when our cells are stressed like that, we don't produce the same amount of ATP or the same amount of energy. And so that's why these wavelengths of light are so important, is because they help our cells sort of function how they were originally designed to.
Well, it's good to know the actual reason why it works. And certainly when I first started using the infrared light, and actually I did it a while back more than now, I started using it. Now I really use it in the mornings, but I started trying it at night, and I did think, I'm not really sure, but I felt like it helped me sleep, which was a bit counterintuitive because it is a very bright light, but I suppose it's a red light, so it's not very blue. Would that be something that you found from people that infrared light helps with sleep as well?
Yeah, there's no doubt, and it sounds, to your point, it sounds sort of counterintuitive that a bright red light would actually help induce better sleep. at night. But that's actually one of the benefits that I noticed most, is my wife and I will often use one of our devices to illuminate our room at night.
Yeah.
So that I actually noticed, it's funny, within about 20 minutes, I'll notice that I'll begin I'll begin to sort of doze off much faster than if we weren't being exposed to those wavelengths, in the evening. But it's not just me. I mean, like, even I know you the Dry Farm Wine guys, Anthony, and some of the other guys on their team. They'll use our devices to illuminate their rooms at night. It's one of the benefits that they've seen most, is it just induces better sleep quality, and it's kind of one of those things where, again, it's all supported by clinical literature too. One particular study that I'm recalling off the top of my head is actually is researchers evaluated sleep quality with a women's basketball team, and they noticed that by exposing them to red and near infrared light wavelengths I think it was over the course of maybe 4 to 8 weeks, I can't remember the exact time frame, but their sleep quality was significantly greater than those that did not receive the therapy in the evening. So it's kind of interesting, but yeah, without a doubt, that's one of the big benefits, is just better overall, or better, improved sleep quality.
Yeah, you have to be careful though, because I went round to my friend Ryan's house a while back, and he had it on, and I was looking up at his flat from outside, and it looked a little bit like he turned it into a red light district, because there's no doubt. I'm sure most of the people that have our devices that are listening to this conversation know exactly what that means. They've got neighbors that kind of give them funny looks, like, what's going on? You got a brothel going on up. Like, what's the deal? I think my neighbours are thinking exactly that. Just interrupting this podcast for one moment to remind you that it is brought to you by Dr. Stephen Simpson and I's course, iwanttounplug.com. If you'd like to access deeper states of focus, productivity and creativity, then you head to iwanttounplug.com. That's iwanttounplug.com, and start to use the skills of neuro-linguistic programming to unplug effectively and feel that focus, productivity and creativity. So if you fancy learning a little bit more about NLP, taking the course, using some relaxation challenges and meditations in there as well, then you can head to iwanttounplug.com, and remember, use the code Zestology for 30% off. That is it. Back to the show. I mean, it's quite a cool job for you, isn't it, Scott? I've thought that for a while, and obviously we've met at a couple of these conferences and we recorded a podcast in person. Do you, in terms of there's quite a lot of fun you can have with it. Have you approached any sports teams or anything like that and said, would you like some Joovvs to see if it could help with performance?
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's we started Joovv first and foremost as to sell our products direct to the consumer. I mean, when we started doing some initial R&D work back in mid 2015, most of the products on the market were like, small handheld devices that, if they delivered the right wavelengths and the right amount of power, they could work. But what was missing was something that you could use to treat, ideally, your entire body, or most of it anyway, in your own home. Because consistency is key when it comes to light therapy. You want to be doing this on some sort of consistent, ideally on a daily basis, but at least 3, 4, 5 times a week. And so I guess I say that knowing that we're always kind of focused on what's the most efficient way people can use this type of therapy, but because of the nature of our devices, especially our new devices, our new modular devices, we've received a lot of inbound interest from professional sports teams, and so it's everyone from the NFL to the NBA to the we've got Olympians that are now using our products, the UFC. That's awesome. Yeah, TJ Dillashaw is the bantamweight champion. He actually just defended his title about a month ago. He's an avid user of our devices and red and near infrared light therapy. So yeah, across the board, there's a growing interest, and we're certainly experiencing that ourselves for sure. Yeah.
And so, in terms of your own lives, you moved to. I didn't realize you'd moved to Orange County. Yeah. How have you set up your new house there? Have you been very strict about blue light in the evening there, and obviously you know so much about light now, and you've really had to delve into the research. But on a personal level, have you got the kids in blue blocking glasses from 6 o'clock, and there's no TV, and the iPads are away? How does it all work in the Nelson household?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, we're not probably as strict as like some of the other people on our team that don't have kids. I mean, they've gone to extremes where they've converted their entire place to hardwire. So there's zero Wi-Fi. They've gone to they've taken certain they've gotten pretty extreme, I guess, in the way they've sort of designed their setups. But us personally, yeah, we've got 4 kids, so it makes it a little bit more challenging. But we certainly are very cognizant to the type of natural light as well as artificial light that we're exposed to. So I'll kind of give you a rundown from in the morning, we try to encourage my wife and I, as well as our kids, experiencing just the morning sunrise, ideally grounded outside. Your feet touching some type of soil or grass or something like that.
Sunrise, that sounds pretty impressive.
Yeah. Well, it's not too early. I'm kind of more of an early morning guy anyway myself, and so it's pretty natural. But throughout the day, especially with our kids, we try to encourage. It's a lot easier to do in Orange County for sure, but to be outside as much as possible. But then, once the sun starts to set, we rarely use artificial light at night. So we actually don't. I mean, it's pretty rare that we'll use any. If we do use any sort of artificial light, it's our own devices to illuminate our house. So we're pretty cognizant of trying to pay attention to that to that sort of.
How do you see?
Yeah. So again, we most of the time we'll use our devices to illuminate our.
Oh, really?
Our house. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Just turn one on in the corner of the room, and it's not, it does a good job of.
Are the kids not like, Dad? Can we not just have a normal light?
It's not too abnormal, but if the TV's on, yeah, they'll have blue blockers on, sure. Yeah, all of us will have that. If I'm up late, working or something like that, I'll definitely make sure I'll have blue blockers on at night. Because that's, if you start to get in a little bit more of a routine of trying to stay away or being intentional about exposing yourself to artificial light, especially blue light, once the sun sets, if you start to get in more of a routine and then you do turn on, a super bright device, whether it's a computer screen or something else, a TV screen, it's shocking how bright, some of the stuff really is. And so, I personally, I'm kind of, we live in a world that's drastically different from our ancestors for sure. And I think, I try to not stress out about things too much, because I think some people can kind of, they're so cognizant about some of this stuff that they stress themselves out to death. But, if you can just be, if everyone could just pay a little bit more attention to not using, bright blue lights, at night, that's so foreign to how our bodies, have evolved over time. Yeah. I mean, and so that's pretty crucial.
I tell you how I know that this stuff works, and that is, I have spoken about this before a while back, but every once in a while I do a late shift which finishes at midnight in my TV job here at Sky, and I was doing it last night actually. And of course you can imagine, it is the studio is so bright, and not only is it bright and full of lights, it's full of EMF devices and radio frequency devices, and not only that, I've got to be properly on it. So there's no kind of winding down for sleep at 11:30 when I'm on air until midnight. But when I first started learning about kind of blue light and blue light blocking glasses, I started thinking, well, I could start to unwind on the drive home and use them on the drive home. And I quickly realized that you actually can't use blue blocking glasses while you drive, because it just makes you, I felt not alert enough. Yeah. And I really don't, I would not recommend that anyone use them while they drive. That's how they work so well. It really does kind of just bring you down a pace or two. It's not good for driving.
It does. There's no doubt. It's one of those things that I notice. That's what, of all like these biohacking stuff. All the different gadgets and tools. I notice like little things like that. I notice the most, right, when I put on blue blocking glasses at night. It It does. It takes, like you said, you described it,
Yeah.
in the right way. It just kind of takes your body down a couple notches, a couple
It really
couple
is.
levels,
It's lovely, isn't it? But yeah,
Yeah,
unfortunately,
yeah,
unfortunately, if you're working till midnight in a bright environment, there's not much you can do about it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. Do what you can.
yeah. I was just chuckling when
Yeah.
you were talking about some of our friends have been a little bit more extreme. You know Luke's story, don't you? And he's got
Oh yeah, yeah.
he's got red lights in his fridge. So if he opens the fridge, he's got like a bright red light. You can't even see what he's getting out of the fridge. He thinks he's getting cheese and he's getting butter. It's a disaster.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, no, I mean, some people on our team have gone super extreme. I mean, we have Wi-Fi in our house, but like when we go to bed at night, we shut it off. My wife's tried to get me in a better habit of like just turning all of the power off.
Yeah.
But we haven't gotten there. It's kind of, if you don't have a kill switch in your house, you gotta go down to the sub panel and turn it off. It's just a little bit of a hassle. But yeah, I mean, just trying to get do some of those little things that you can control. We have not graduated to the Luke story. Red lights in your fridge. Yeah,
That's the next step.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We're going to see him later this week, and so I'm interested.
Oh, cool.
To check.
Ask him if he can get you a drink out of the fridge and see what he says.
That's funny. I'll mention that.
Yeah,
that we had a conversation. Sure.
Wow, that's cool. So nice. You mentioned that your team. How big is the team now?
We're about, we use a fair amount of freelancers for different functions of the business, but full-time people, I think we're at like 12 or 13, I believe, something like that.
So when we first met, it was nowhere near that, was it?
No. I mean, we've been fortunate to grow at a manageable pace. But it seems like about every quarter we'll add one or two people to the team, roughly, something like that. So that's we've been able to manage the growth. And one of the things was leading up to this most recent sort of refresh of our product lines, we wanted to be in a good position to really do that the right way, because it was a pretty big milestone for us as a company to get these out the door. We started R&D on these new devices shortly after we launched our original one back in February of 2016. So it's been a long road to get here. But yeah, no, I think we're in a pretty good position to make sure that we're delivering on all the things that we want to deliver on, from Zappos-like customer service to making sure that people can onboard successfully with their product after buying it from us. All those little things that we pay attention to.
Yeah. And that's great that you're growing as well. So congratulations.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a fun ride. And I think what's helped us is, and maybe what sets us apart is a couple things. Is one, we are very diligent and try to provide a lot of education around light therapy. We do that consistently, most of it through our own content that's on our site. But we try to make sure that that's leveled up, just because most people, when they first hear about light therapy, they think it's just completely out there, and we've tried to really want to make sure that people understand this is a therapy that's supported by a lot of scientific and peer-reviewed published clinical literature. And then too, like from a customer service standpoint, we've always viewed that as sort of a growth channel for us as a company, knowing that most people might feel like they're taking a little bit of a they're taking a big step when they buy a product from ours. One, because it's a little bit more expensive, and then two, they still have questions about how light therapy really works, and so we want to make sure that we provided like sort of an environment and help them on board with their product as best as possible, when they first start using it. So those are some of the little things that we try to pay attention to, and I think have helped us grow over the past year and a half or so.
Okay. And you mentioned how you kind of have the infrared lights on in the background. You turn it into a red light district at all hours of the day and night. Are the lights safe for pregnant women and for kids?
Yeah. So the official response is, when it comes to kids and if you're a female that's pregnant, speak to your trusted healthcare provider, because when it comes to I'll put it this way. Our kids use it all the time. If you have when you think about newborns that in a hospital, they're oftentimes exposed to, especially if they have any type of liver dysfunction, they're exposed to certain wavelengths of light, in order to help induce better liver function. So, we're just harnessing natural wavelengths of light that are found in the sun. So yeah, we always recommend talking to your trusted healthcare provider. But when it comes to pregnancy, the thing that it's just such a touchy subject, because you're never going to find clinical trials that are enrolling patients that are pregnant, because no one what mom is going to do that is going to while she's pregnant with her baby is going to put herself into a enroll in a clinical trial. So you just won't ever see published literature when it comes to pregnancy. But sort of anecdotally, Dr. Michael Hamlin, who's on our scientific advisory board, he runs his own photomedicine lab at Harvard. He's a PhD, is arguably one of the world's most the world's leading experts when it comes to photobiomodulation. His theory is that actually it would even be even better for mom and baby during pregnancy, just because of the overabundance of stem cells. Especially with the fetus, and stem cells are just loaded with mitochondria. And so in theory, it actually should be even better, during pregnancy. But again, it's just a theory. So it's one of those things that you'll never see published research on, that speaks exactly to that. And just, another story is we are recording a podcast with the people from Neurohacker Collective a couple weeks ago. And one of the naturopaths that's now doing a lot of the podcasts, she runs a clinic in San Diego. I think it's North County Natural Health, I believe. But she's pregnant, even though she's a huge fan of light therapy, and she's pregnant. But she's just not willing to, she wants to take a little bit more of a conservative approach during her pregnancy. So she's not using, even though she was using it all the time before pregnancy. So that gives you a little bit of an example. I mean, it largely depends on probably, how much. How conservative or aggressive you want to be with sort of the things that you're trying, on your kids or yourself. But for the most part, it's, light therapy is really unique in the sense that it's extremely, extremely safe. There's really not a whole lot of downside risk at all.
Now, Scott, something that I've asked you before, and I'm going to ask you again, is what is one book that you'd recommend and one tip for living with more energy, vitality, and motivation? So I can't remember what you said before, actually, but I'm
trying to remember what book I did mention before when we were chatting in Pasadena.
Well, it can be anything. It can be fiction, non-fiction, a book that's had a big impact on you personally, or just one that you enjoyed reading. It can be anything.
Yeah. So recently, I really enjoyed it primarily because I followed him for quite some time. But the name of the book is Lost and Founder. And it's written by Rand Fishkin, who he started Moz, M-O-Z. It used to be called SEOmoz.com. But it's they're thought of as kind of some of the leaders in the SEO space. But I've always really, really enjoyed his take on business. He's always been one of those guys that is extremely transparent about whether it's business or personal decisions. I've just really, really always enjoyed his approach. And I've always really liked his writing style too. And so, anyway, Lost and Found, if you're into kind of startups and business and that kind of thing, I'd highly recommend that book. It's really, really transparent view into, how he started and grew Moz over the course of, 10 years or so, something like that. So that'd probably be the book I'd recommend the most. That'd probably be a recent book that I'd recommend checking out. In terms of what was the second question? A tip for living.
Tip for living with more energy, vitality, and motivation.
This is going to sound cliche, but I just to reiterate again, just try to get more natural light, especially in the morning. I think that really does that really helps to not only it's scientifically shown to rebalance your circadian rhythm, but I think that the more, as a personal testament, the more I do that on a regular basis, is just get more natural light, especially in the morning. The better off my day typically is. And so that'd probably be the one tip I'd leave this Zestology listeners with.
Thank you. Well, I tell you what, that stat at the start was incredible. Was it 93%?
Yeah, 93%, and it's probably, when you stop and think about most how you live, most of the people that are listening to this, it's pretty accurate, and so 93% of our lives, and at scale, Tony, when you think about that over the course of like 50 years, that's a lot of time indoors. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so drastically different than how our grandfathers, our great grandfathers, et cetera, all down the line. It's so drastically different than how they lived. And so you can't expect our biology, our biological systems to adapt that fast, to such a drastic change in the environment. And so, so just, that's a interesting stat to keep maybe put a sticky note on your computer, when you're working throughout the day.
Incorporate that stat into the title of this podcast. I'm not quite sure how yet, but I'll work on that one over the next couple of weeks.
Man.
Well, Scott, look, the final question is, where can people find out more about you, but also about your new devices? Because I know you've released your new range fairly recently. You've been working on it for a long time, because when I saw you in Texas in April, you were very excited about this, weren't you?
Yeah. There's no doubt. It's been something that we've tried to we've been working on. Like I said, almost since the very conception of Joovv. But so I just got the best place is just hit our website, joovv.com, J, 2 O's, 2 V's. It's kind of short. It's like a play on rejuvenate. So joovv.com. And you can check out, if you're interested in digging into the science, check out the Learn page. If you're interested in just checking out our new products, go to the shop page, of course. But a couple, I'll leave everyone with a couple different features that we're pretty stoked about with our new devices. Is first and foremost, they're modular now, meaning that you can, almost like similar to Legos, you can build out your own full body Joovv over time. And so, if you want to just start with one device, and then maybe 6 months later, add another device to it. And then, over the course of, 2 or 3 years, you can build out your own full body system, which is really, really cool. So that's probably the biggest, at a high level, the biggest change with our devices. But across the board, they're loaded with a lot more features now. So you've got a built-in one-touch control that allows you to switch between red or near-infrared wavelengths, or use both at the same time. We're now using electrostatic coated LED lenses, which enables the devices to deliver even more irradiance, so even more power. There's, I know most of the listeners probably aren't going to be totally thrilled with the new Bluetooth functionality, but it is there. It's optional.
I'm not bothered about the Bluetooth, but you can switch it off, can't you?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, it's totally optional. So you can, out of the box, they won't emit Bluetooth. But if you pair the devices together or pair them with our new app, they'll emit Bluetooth, or you can hardwire. They come with a hardwire kit too for those that don't prefer it. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, awesome. If you're only using a Joovv 10 minutes a day, it's not that big of a Bluetooth is not that big of a deal in my opinion. But yeah, those are and they're now FDA cleared as Class 2 medical devices, and so that was a pretty big milestone, just because the regulatory the regulatory requirements when you go from Class 1 to Class 2 are just that much greater. And so it doesn't necessarily mean a lot to maybe the end user, with the exception that across the board, there's just a lot of safety and performance testing that you need to do to go from Class 1 to Class 2. And so it was just a pretty big milestone for us as a company, which is kind of cool. So yeah, we're pretty excited about the new products. And if you're interested in checking those out, go to joovv.com.
Awesome. Scott, thank you so much. I really love your products. I use it almost every day. My neighbor hates your products. I love your products. But I mean, I really awesome. Do. And I feel great using them. And so, yeah, thanks. And it's great to catch up. I hope to see you in person at some point. I don't know when my next trip to the States is, but if you ever come over here, then let me know.
Oh, absolutely. We've actually got someone on our remote team that's in London, and so my wife and I are kind of maybe trying to plan a trip over there.
That'd be so see him. Great if you did. Yeah. Okay, well, Scott, great to talk to you, and good luck. I'll speak to you again soon.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thanks again, Tony. Always a pleasure, man.
there you go. Thank you to Scott. 93% of all our time spent indoors. Well, it's just made me come outside to this canal today, and it might not be the most picturesque destination ever. There's a big road up above, there's a lorry reversing in the distance, there's some kind of factory doing something over there. I don't know what it is. I have no idea what's going on here, but yeah, it's an industrial destination, but in the midst of it all, a kind of a rather delightful overgrown canal, so it's not all bad, and I found a little bit of nature to get outside in my 2 hours off today before I go and sit in an office until midnight. Oh yeah, it really is industrial here. Right, I'm going to slowly make my way away from this industrial factory to my left across the canal. As always, thank you for listening to Zestology. If you would like to know a little bit more about the Joovv and other hacks that I use on a daily, or not necessarily daily, but on a regular basis, you can head to tonywrighton.com/hacks. That's tonywrighton.com/hacks, where I've been putting all the stuff that I use on a regular basis. And there's some supplements on there. I think the Joovv is on there, and basically anything that kind of makes me feel good, or improves my performance, or helps me feel better, or improves my health, or helps me sleep better, or whatever it might be. Just one other thing to say. I've been talking in my weekly newsletter about the black walnut cleanse that I've been doing. Yeah, I'm still not quite sure if this is a good idea. I've been doing a parasite cleanse, and it basically involves taking this tincture of black walnut and wormwood, and you put it into... I told you it was planes, trains and automobiles, didn't I? Now a very loud train is going past. You put some black walnut and wormwood into some water every morning and evening. It's quite taxing on the body. And some interesting stuff occurs. I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't know where you're listening to this right now, but if you've done a parasite cleanse or you've done a black walnut cleanse, do let me know. Genuinely speaking, I'd love to speak to someone else who's done it. Because, as you know, I like to try lots of weird and wonderful things in the name of research on this podcast, and that includes black walnut and wormwood tincture cleanses. But in all honesty, I don't really know if I'm doing the right thing, or if these slightly strange symptoms are what I'm supposed to be expecting. So yeah, let me know. Use replace tonywrighton.com if you've done that and you've got anything to say on the matter. I'll try and keep it as delicate as possible on the podcast. And that is it from me. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.